Ever tried soldering? I took a swing at fixing a loose wire on a speaker once, and let's just say it ended up more hot mess than hot fix.
Yeah, you really got to know what you're doing with that stuff.
Turns out there's way more to soldering than meets the eye, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a field that takes real precision, and it's not just about getting the metal hot enough. You need a good grasp of the science behind it, too.
That's why we're doing a deep dive today into the world of solderers. We're using RoleCatcher.com as our guide for this one. They've got this awesome platform all about career development. And we're going deep, people, like really exploring what it takes to make it in this surprisingly complex profession.
And it really is more complex than people think. I mean, it's a profession that's everywhere. When you really look,
Yep.
everything uses it.
Really? Give me an example.
Well, think about the tiny circuits in your phone, or even those huge steel beams holding up skyscrapers.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, both rely on the skills of a solderer. It's pretty incredible when you stop and think about it.
Okay, so let's back up a bit. For those of us who haven't spent much time around a soldering iron, what's the basic principle that makes this process so important?
At its core, it's all about creating a strong bond between metals, a permanent bond. But here's where the science comes in. You can't just melt any two pieces of metal together. It's about the filler metal.
Filler metal.
Yeah, that's the stuff that actually creates the bond. And it's got to have a lower melting point than the metals you're trying to join.
So it's kind of like a super specific glue for metal.
Exactly. You wouldn't use, like, wood glue to fix a teacup, right? Same idea here. Each type of solder, it's designed for specific metals, specific applications. It all comes down to the properties of the materials you're working with.
So it's a lot more than just heating metal until it melts.
Oh, for sure. You really need to get the materials at a molecular level.
Wow. Didn't realize there was so much to it.
Yeah, and beyond even the science, there's a real art to getting that clean, strong joint. You need a steady hand, good eyesight, and you got to know how to control that heat just right. Too much, you risk damaging the materials. Too little, you get a weak joint.
And this expertise is needed in what, like manufacturing, construction, electronics? That's just what we mentioned earlier. What else?
Oh, tons of industries. And what's fascinating is that the skills and knowledge you need, it changes depending on the industry. A solderer who works on pipelines is dealing with completely different techniques and materials than someone soldering components onto a circuit board.
So it's really not just one job title, solderer. It's like a whole bunch of specialties.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget the rewards.
The rewards.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like that feeling of creating something tangible, something that requires real skill. I'd say that's a pretty big reward.
It's like, like one of those really specific jobs you don't think about much, but it's everywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's their work life really look like?
Well, let's see. Work environments for solderers can be really diverse.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be on a busy factory floor, with all the machines and the noise.
Yeah.
Or you might find yourself in a workshop, a really quiet one, soldering tiny parts under a microscope. It really depends.
So there's that variety we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
Like each day is going to be different.
Exactly. And we can't forget about working outdoors too, right?
Yeah.
Think about the people who work on those massive pipelines.
Or bridges.
Yeah.
Bridges, wind turbines even.
Wow, that's a lot of different places.
Yeah, they face, unique challenges working outdoors like that. Heights, remote locations, all that.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical 9 to 5.
Right.
But that variety, it's kind of come with like some specific demands, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of person does well in those kinds of environments? Well, you definitely need, you have to have stamina, that's for sure. You're handling heavy equipment. Sometimes you're in really awkward positions. It can be physically demanding,
Yeah, bet.
And then you can't forget the mental side of it either. Soldering, when you're dealing with those tiny components,
Yeah.
it takes serious focus, like intense concentration. You got to pay attention to every little detail.
No room for shaky hands, I'm guessing.
Not a chance. And then there's the whole safety aspect, right?
Yeah, of course.
You're working with extreme heat, sometimes hazardous materials, even open flames occasionally.
Right. So safety glasses are not just for show.
Yeah.
This job.
Yeah, they're essential, for sure. But it's not all just physical demands and safety stuff.
What else then?
Well, you got to be a problem solver, too. Things don't always go perfectly, right?
Yeah.
So a good solderer, they've got to be able to think on their feet, adapt to those unexpected problems.
It's not like you can just memorize the rule book and be good.
No, not at all. You have to be able to actually use your knowledge, your experience to figure things out in the moment.
Okay, so give me an example. Like, what's a situation where a solderer would have to think fast?
Let me see. Well, I knew this one solder, right. He was working on this, it was a critical component on a satellite, actually.
Wow.
And get this, the launch was already scheduled, everything was ready to go, and the part totally busted, like beyond repair.
Oh, no. So what happened?
Well, he had to get creative, right?
Yeah.
He ended up having to improvise a whole fix using whatever they had on hand.
That's incredible. Talk about pressure. Did it work?
Oh, yeah. It took hours, like hours of really meticulous work. But he did it. Created this workaround that not only worked, but it actually worked even better than the original part.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really shows you the ingenuity you need in this field.
See, that's what I mean about unsung heroes.
Mhm.
You never think about the skill it takes to keep those kinds of projects running.
It's true, people don't realize how much expertise is involved. It's not just manual labor, it's understanding the why behind everything, knowing the materials, the techniques, and then being able to think on your feet when things go wrong.
And I imagine that's only becoming more important as technology keeps advancing.
Absolutely. In fact, RoleCatcher talks about that, specifically how automation is changing the soldering landscape.
Right, so are the robots coming for their jobs? That's what everyone wants to know.
Well, it's not that simple. It's true that some of those more, I guess, repetitive tasks are being automated,
Sure, makes sense.
but that's actually creating a bigger need for really highly skilled solderers.
Oh, interesting. So it's not like being replaced. It's more like needing to learn new things to adapt.
Exactly. I mean, someone still has to program those robots, right? And calibrate the equipment and fix it when it breaks down. That's where the really experienced solderers come in, the ones who understand both the old ways of doing things and the new tech.
So it's like any skilled trade then. You're not learning a single task. You're learning the fundamentals, and that lets you change as things around you change.
Exactly. It's about evolving. And speaking of evolving, RoleCatcher actually outlines a really clear career path for these folks.
Oh, yeah. So how does it work?
Well, you usually start as a junior solderer, just learning the basics. Working under more experienced people, getting the hang of things.
Put in the time.
That's it. And then as you get better, as you get more experience, you can move into more specialized areas. Like maybe you get really good at working with a specific material.
So you start with basic electronics and move up to, like, I don't know, soldering parts for spaceships.
Exactly. The possibilities are pretty much endless. And then you get into the senior roles, and that's where it gets exciting. You start to lead projects, you train the new folks, you might even work directly with engineers, developing totally new techniques.
Wow, so you go from, like, just following the directions to actually shaping the future of soldering.
Exactly. And that's what's really interesting. RoleCatcher points out that these really specific, specialized skills, they can actually be the perfect foundation to start your own business.
Now that's what I'm talking about. All right, tell me more.
Think about it. You've mastered a really difficult skill, you've made connections with suppliers, and you know what the market needs. You've got everything you need to go solo.
So you could do high-end electronics repair or custom metalwork, anything really.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's a huge demand right now for skilled trades, so the opportunity is there to find something you love and really make it work.
It's a good reminder that entrepreneurship, it's not all about Silicon Valley and apps. If you have a skill and people need that skill, that's all it takes.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you have it, a deep dive into the world of soldering. Turns out, it's a lot more complex and interesting and rewarding than you might think.
And a huge thank you to RoleCatcher.com for giving us so much to talk about. For anyone out there who's thinking about a career change or even just curious about the world around them, remember there's always something new to discover.
That's right. Stay curious, everyone. We'll see you next time.